Yes, yes. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Naples Mac User Group meeting today, Wednesday, January 6th. We're thrilled to have all of you. Welcome to all of our members from all over the world and throughout the United States and Canada. We also want to welcome our guests today. We have about 50 plus guests from other Mac user groups. For example, the Mackinac Mug of Midland, Michigan, Suburban Chicago Apple users, Suffolk Mac User Group in England, Cape Cod Nauset newcomers, Applejack User Group from Jefferson City, Missouri. Welcome to all of you to the Naples Mac User Group weekly meetings. Our meetings are each and every Wednesday, exactly at the same time. Normally, you have to be a member to join our meetings, and primarily it's because of the security issues with Zoom. We made an exception today, and because we have a special guest, we wanted to share this meeting with many others. We have 44 weekly meetings a year, and we're off in July and August. Our classes have begun this Saturday. Naples Mac User Group is famous for its classes. We have 10 classes. Class attendance this year appears that will beat all previous years. Members are $15 and non-members are $24. So if anybody attends more than one meeting, it's you'll get a much better deal if you just buy a membership. The first meeting will be this Saturday, and it's going to be on Zoom and FaceTime and COVID-19. There is no other tool that has brought people closer together than Zoom. This will be a great meeting. It's going to have a record attendance, probably about 70 attendees. The two meetings after that will be on Big Sur on the 16th and the 23rd. Will be taught by Jeff Bohr, our own member, a member of our board. And this will kick off the information on Big Sur. The meetings after that will be January 30th, an iOS 14 meeting, an iPad OS 14 meeting on February 6th. On February the 13th, entertainment and streaming. Photos will be on the following week. On the 27th will be the Apple Watch. And March 6th, Joe Kissel will be with us and we'll be doing iCloud. Our last meeting, which will be on the 13th of March, will be on security. So as you can see, we have a great schedule of meetings, and everyone is welcome to attend. Critical news, we ask those that are timid to still hold off on installing Big Sur. I have got a note out to Dennis and Jeff just this morning asking them if they think it's okay for you guys to go ahead. Those that are not timid, just go ahead and do the installation. I have done it. Other than the super duper issue, I have not found any other issues with installing Big Sur. Our in-house Naples Mug Zoom genius is Eckert. Eckert is the guy that was responsible for pushing us into Zoom. We never lost a week at the Naples Mac User Group. We immediately switched over to Zoom, and we've continued, and our meetings are double and triple the attendance of what they used to be at the library. And the intentions are to stay with Zoom, and maybe every once in a great while we'll have a meeting at the library. A couple of meetings coming up. Christian Boyce will be with us on January the 20th, and he will be discussing widgets in iOS 14 for the iPad and the iPhone. He's a real smart Mac guy. He's been with us a couple times before, and you will find this meeting very enjoyable. The meeting next week will be Mitch, the iOS genius, a member for many years of the Mac group, and he will also be covering some additional items, the mini HomePod, a WeatherTech cup holder, and also Sheeta will be reviewing this new red hot Thunderbird powered hard drive for backups. And it'll primarily also be a Q&A meeting. Today, I now want to turn the meeting over to Sheeta, who will introduce and welcome our speaker, Terry White.
Thank you, George. Everyone, if you could unmute yourselves, and after I introduce Terry, I would love for you to give him a very warm welcome. So for the kickoff of the 2021 Naples Mac Friend User Group Weekly Wednesday Presentation Series, we are honored to welcome well-known and well-loved principal, worldwide design and photography evangelist, and my friend for almost 30 years, Terry White. Terry, it's all yours.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hey, welcome.
Terry.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome, Terry. Thank you.
This is,
Hello.
I think, the
Hello,
first,
Terry, and welcome.
Hello.
Even-
I think this is the first user group meeting I've done since my own user group meeting. So glad to be here.
We're thrilled to have you.
And that was, I don't know how many years ago now, at least 5 or 6 years ago. So good to be around Mac users and user group people again. And I hope that I can keep you entertained for the next hour. Feel free to ask questions. Sheeta, I'm going to lean on you to if I miss something or don't, because I don't know that I'll be able to even see the chat.
Okay.
But just feel free to interrupt if there's a burning question or something that is not understood from what I said. Just go ahead and interrupt me and let me know what that is.
Okay, no, don't do that. Raise your hand. Raise your hand, please.
No,
Thank
I
you.
didn't mean me. I mean, if
Yeah,
someone
okay.
raises,
All
raises a question, then I don't see it.
All right, perfect.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead. It's all yours.
You should see a flower now.
We do.
All right, let's get to it. So I have, in no particular order, a laundry list of things that have been added to Photoshop over the years. And since I haven't presented to this group, it's not like I can say, okay, what's new since the last time I presented, because I don't know what's new since the last time you saw Photoshop. So I'm just going to go over some of the biggies that have happened, let's say, over the last 3 years. And some of these things you probably have seen, and some I'm guessing you have not, because we don't always make a big deal about every little thing that we add. So with that said, I'm going to start with something that could be confusing if you're not aware of what it's for. So let's go ahead and get into just simply saving a document in Photoshop now. For years and years and years, whenever you wanted to save a document, you go up to File, you do a Save As, and you would just save it to your hard drive. You'd pick it, give it a name, pick a location, pick a format, and save it. But now you get this dialog box at least once, unless you've turned it off. That gives you a choice: saving it to your computer like you always did for the last 30 years, 30 plus years, or another option, which is fairly new, and that is saving it to your cloud documents. Now, why would you pick one or the other? If you, I guess the easiest thing to say, if you're happy with the way things are working now, keep doing what you're doing. Save it on your computer and don't show this again, and life will be good. It'll just continue to work the way it always did. However, if you're working on Photoshop on more than one system, and it could be even more than one platform, you're working on Photoshop on a Mac, you're working on Photoshop on an iPad, you're working on Photoshop on a Windows machine, whatever it might be, then saving as a cloud document could give you an advantage, because instead of saving it on your local hard drive and you having to move it around and get it to those other devices, it will save it to Creative Cloud, to your storage space. And then the next time you go to Photoshop on one of those other devices, you just simply hit open from Cloud Documents, and you would be able to see that file. So let's say I was at work or at school and I worked on something, and I now say save as Cloud Document, and I go ahead and hit save. Now that's saving it up to the cloud. And then when I quit out of Photoshop and leave the building and I get home, I would go up to the file menu and just simply say open. But instead of opening on my computer, which it was normally would be on, I would click this button that says open Cloud Documents. And once I say open Cloud Documents, I would see, oh yeah, there's the flower I was working on at the other location. It's already ready to go here for me to open. So just Cloud Documents, think of it as a way of easily getting the document from one place to another, and the fact that it's backed up. Now, one of the other advantages or disadvantages, depending on the way you look at it, is when you are working on a cloud document, your saves are automatic. So unlike working on a desktop, when you hit save, you have to hit save. Otherwise, it doesn't know you want to save your changes. Saving as cloud documents is automatic. And I believe now in this latest version, because some people wanted the ability to turn that off, I believe you can turn that off now, but I haven't seen that. I haven't gone to look for that preference yet, but I think you can save off, you can turn off the auto save. Okay, so that's what Cloud Documents is all about. And I just wanted to get that out of the way, just in case people had questions. What are Cloud Documents? Why would I even care? Do I need to save in Cloud Documents? And the answer is only if you want to. There's no requirement to save in Cloud Documents. You can save the way you always did. All right, next up, let's talk about free transform and warp. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can close that. Yeah, I can close that. Good. I'm going to go ahead and it's telling me all the people waiting to get into the room. So it's like right above what I'm trying to see. All right, so let's go ahead and free transform. So I'm going to hit Command T. Let's try that again. Command T, there we go. And when you go into free transform and you go to warp, which is this button right at the top here, this, I'll zoom in on it, that button right there. Typically, in previous versions of Photoshop, that would give you a grid. It would be, I believe, 9 squares or rectangles, and you would be able to move the intersections around to warp your object. Now you'll notice that when I go to warp, it doesn't give me a grid at all. It just gives me a box. Now I still have handles. I can still go in and do things and warp my flower, but I don't have the grid. And that's because we now default to no grid, and we don't force you to use a specific kind of grid. So you can go to default and you go back to the 3x3 that you always had. You can go to 4x4 now, which is new. You can go to 5x5, which is new. So you have many more grid points to be able to bend and warp your object on. Or you go back to no grid, and you'll notice the buttons in the upper left here, up here, they let me split this any way that I want. So if I choose the first button, it lets me split it with a, intersection. And let's say I want to be able to bend the flower right here. I can click and it gives me a point to be able to bend it right there. And I say, oh, you know what? I want another one. I want to be able to bend it down here. And so basically what you're able to do is customize how you want to be able to interact with this flower, and how you want to be able to, what points you want to be able to add to be able to control how and where you bend it. So it makes warping so much easier, and the ability to just really get into where you want to do it. The other big thing that's new here is that in the past, you could pick a point and start warping whatever it is you're doing. But now if you hold down your Shift key, you can select multiple points, including deselecting that one I did, and you can warp multiple points at the same time. So that's also new, and it's a big plus, especially if I do something like this. Hang on, deselect. So let me do it. There we go. There we go. Select all of those, and then, for example, I can just pick up the whole thing, grow my flower, shrink my flower, bend my flower any way that I want. So if I need that flower to be a little shorter, that would have taken several minutes, if not hours, to do that before and make it look right. Just shortening that stem like that and making it look like it's supposed to be that long or this long. So much easier to do now. And again, if I needed to go to be bigger, no problem, making that bigger or smaller, just like that. And I can pick on any points that I want to be able to continue to warp. So again, if I need the flower to be a little more peppy, I can just go ahead and bend it up and make it not wilt as much as it was wilting, and make it maybe not as thick as it was, and making any changes that I want. Once I'm done, I click OK, or click the commit button, and that becomes my new flower. Now, also keeping in mind that that was on its own layer. So I had to separate it from its own layer first, which is what I'm going to get into next, to be able to warp it without warping the background as well. All right, next up, speaking of selecting things, let's go in and let's go to this one. All right, so this one doesn't have a separate layer. These are individual objects that are, they're individual pieces of food on this background. So I don't have them separated. I can't warp anything individually. And let's say I want to start making selections. Well, and this is the thing I've been saying for the last 20 some odd years, that with every new major version of Photoshop, there's usually a new way to select things. And that's because you can never have, of all the tools you can have in a program, there's never too many ways to make a selection, because every circumstance is different, every subject is different. So the more ways to select things, the better. All right, so in that vein, there's a brand new object selection tool. So it's a tool on the tool panel, and it may not be in this exact spot on your tool panel, because you can customize your tool panel. So I think I'm looking at one of my custom tool panels. But anyway, once you find the object selection tool, I'm going to show you a way to find the tool if you can't find it. You click on it, and then you get an option at the top of how you want to start selecting. Do you want to start selecting with a rectangle or a lasso? You can pick either one for whatever works best for you. You might think, well, these are mostly round or curvy. How would a rectangle help me? Even if I grab the object select tool and I make a rectangular selection around, and I'm not even doing a good job around that sauce, when I let go, Adobe Sensei figured out, oh, you want that? No problem. So if I zoom in on that now, you can see that it's nicely selected. And just with one click, it figured out what I was trying to select. And you'll hear me use the term Adobe Sensei on a regular basis. And that is, when you hear me say Adobe Sensei, that's Adobe's branded artificial intelligence. So the artificial intelligence behind the object select tool says, I'm guessing you're trying to select this, and I'm going to go ahead and select that for you, even though you used a rectangle to do it. Now, with all selections, it's not going to always be perfect. It's not going to be perfect in every circumstance, but it certainly gets me there a lot quicker. Same thing here. If I wanted to select one of these zucchini or cucumbers, whatever these are, I think zucchini, and I make a rectangular selection, and even though it's got that tomato on the right-hand side, it did its best to kind of work its way around that stem, even though it didn't get it perfectly, but it got me 99% of the way there to where I could easily fix that one little piece with another selection. So, and I do one of these peppers, same thing. Even if I'm overlapping one of the other peppers, it says, oh, you're probably just trying to select this one, and it makes that selection for me. So selecting things in Photoshop 30 some odd years later has never been easier than it is right now with the object selection tool and other things I'm about to show you. Now, if I did want to warp, duplicate, clone, whatever that was that I just selected, the same rules apply. If I wanted to put that on its own layer, Command J, now that pepper's on its own layer, separate from the background. And now I could free transform it. I could make it a little bigger. I could make it, well, I can't make it smaller because it's still the one behind it. But I could rotate it. I could, kind of duplicate it. I could move it over. I could say that maybe we want a small pepper up here, and that kind of looks more natural when I do that. Keeping in mind that I got to be mindful of the shadows that are already there and what I want to cast. But, and the lighting also is going, you got to look at the way the lights go too. Otherwise, it's a dead giveaway that you did something. But you get the idea that it's pretty easy to now make selections on individual objects in a photo and do whatever you want to do to them. You could adjust them, you could brighten them, darken them, change their color, whatever it is that you want to do. Okay, next up, I'm going to go ahead and go into let me do this next one. All right, let's go open, and I want to open this one, I believe. Not that one, that's the one I don't want. All right, I should have a frame example. If not, I'm just going to start opening all of these. All right, you know what? I'll just, for the sake of time, I'll just go ahead and open up that one. Okay. When you're laying things out in Photoshop, you're typically laying them out on multiple layers, like we've done here. And if you need them in a specific shape, that's where it becomes challenging, because you'd have to draw that shape, mask the object with it, so forth and so on. So if people in this group are familiar with InDesign, InDesign solved that problem over 20 years ago with frames. If you want to place something on a page, you use the frame tool. Your frames can be vector shapes. They can be any shape you want, and they automatically mask the object that's coming in. Well, the frame tool actually made its way to Photoshop. Now, it's not as completely sophisticated as the ones in InDesign, you know, framing and linking text and all that stuff. But it goes a long way for people that are using Photoshop to do layout work or graphic design. So there's an actual frame tool on the tool panel. It's right here. And when you use the frame tool, you have a choice by default of two shapes. So you have a rectangle and an ellipse. You can pick whichever one you want to start off with. Now, I'm being very specific about that because the frame tool literally only gives you those two choices. No octagons, no triangles, not just rectangles and circles or ellipses, and that's it. So if I drag out a frame, it creates that frame there. And now if I go grab a photo to drag into it, I'm going to use my Creative Cloud library to do this. Let's use, we got sports going on here. I don't know if I have any sports images in this library, but let's see. If not, I'll just grab this person celebrating. All right, so I just drag that image in, and it automatically masks that image to the shape of that rectangle that I drew. And that's what a frame does. Now, if we go look at that on the layers panel, it shows me the frame, it shows me the contents, and the contents can be always manipulated, moved around separately. So you can click between the frame and adjust the frame shape like this, or you can click on the actual image in the layers panel. And then when you make an adjustment, like using your move tool, you're moving the actual image inside the frame. So pretty much just like InDesign, just the way InDesign works. Now, what if I want a frame that's a different shape? What if I don't want a rectangle or an ellipse? Well, technically, any shape can become a frame. So for example, if I were to, let's just create a new document really quickly. And I'll just use the default size. There's my new document. And actually, let's just fill this with white. There we go. And now that I got that filled, if I wanted to create a frame in a different shape here, what is this telling me about? Thank you. I wanted to create a frame in a different shape, even with text, anything that's vector-based can be converted into a frame. So it could be done with a shape from the shapes panel. It could be done with text. It could be done with Illustrator files that you bring in or copy and paste in. Basically, any vector is fair game, because technically for Photoshop, all the frames are vector masks. So that's all they really are in a nutshell. But let's say, for example, that I create text and I go ahead and use the word Naples. Of course, that's white text on a white background, so we can't really see it yet. but let's go ahead and give that a color now just so we can see it. There we go. And now I got the word Naples there. Well, there's all kinds of ways. There were already all kinds of ways to put an image inside text, but now one of your ways is to right click on that text layer, and you'll notice that you have an option to convert to frame. So if it's vector, if it sees it as vector, you can go ahead and convert it to a frame, and then it'll work just like any other frame inside Photoshop. So convert to frame. It's going to name it the same thing as a text. Keep in mind, once you do this, it's no longer text. You can't change. If you got a typo, you'd have to do it over again or undo it. There's no way to fix the typo because now it's just an image frame. And if I were to drag over an image into that, we can drag over the lion, for example. We see the lion taking up the letter P because it's really not that big. And let's go ahead and free transform that and make the lion bigger. There we go. And of course, you want to pick something that's easy to see, like the lion, and say, oh yeah, I can see that lion in there. There it is. So frames are basically any vector shape. And if you don't want to draw a vector shape, you have the frame tool that'll create rectangles and ellipses. All right, so that's frames inside of Photoshop. I'm going to close this document. Don't need that anymore. Don't need this one anymore. Let's go into, for my photographers out there, let's do something camera raw. Oh, actually, before we do that, let's do this. For my photographers out there, here's an image that I shot on my dining room table with my iPhone. So just a standard iPhone. I think it was my 11 at the time, 11 Pro. And as you know, over the years, Apple's added the ability to shoot in what they call portrait mode. I think all the way back to the iPhone 10. Portrait mode gives you this look of shallow depth of field. And it's kind of cool that you can do that. Well, if you shoot portrait mode on an iPhone, what comes over in that file, if you just bring that file over without converting it, is what Photoshop knows as a depth map. In other words, it knows from the iPhone's processing what the depth is supposed to look like. Now, there's not really a lot of depth of field in this one. It looks like everything is almost pretty much in focus. But because it was shot in portrait mode, that depth map is there, and I can now manipulate it in Photoshop after the fact. So if I go to my filter menu and I go to blur and I go to the lens blur, which has been there for a while, but in the last couple of versions, it's been improved to look more realistic. Let's try that again. Pop-up killed it. Let's go back, filter, blur, lens blur. There we go. Once I bring up the lens blur, then you'll see under source that I have the option of depth map. If you don't have a depth map, that just means the file you're working on doesn't have one. So you're not going to be able to do this. But any file that you shot in portrait mode and you, again, didn't convert it, you brought like just, what do you call it? The airdrop it over, no conversion, you should be able to do this. So now if I were to use that depth map and I were to adjust my blur focal length, which I can exaggerate here, you see that the front of it got blurry. Well, that's not what I had in mind. I actually want the depth of field to go in a different way. So now I can set the focal point with this tool. That's meaning tell Photoshop what should be in focus. So when I grab that tool and click, it puts the object in focus, and you can see the chairs in the background go out of focus. And I can click further up front, and now the object, the glass object, is starting to become out of focus. I can click back here, and now the foreground's out of focus, but the background's in focus. I can click on one of the chairs. I can click on the object again. I can lower or change that blur focal distance to whatever I want it to be to control my depth of field. So this is it's starting to get crazy with photography and what we're going to be able to do after the fact, meaning that a lot of this you would have years ago, you would have no chance of changing if you didn't get it right in the camera. But if you change your mind now and say, well, I kind of like, maybe this bottom portion to be the focal point, I can now change that after the fact in Photoshop. So that's the lens blur filter, which has been there for a while, improved in the last couple of versions of Photoshop. And now, of course, taking advantage of the depth map from portrait mode inside of an iPhone. All right, and that becomes my new shot. All right, let's go ahead and close that. I'm just looking at my notes here to make sure I don't miss anything. All right, let's go open up, not in Cloud Documents. Let's go open up on my computer. Demo files. I want, this is what I want, CC demo files. There we go. Okay, I want to open up an image. Sorry, folks. The sorting's driving me crazy here. Photoshop, there we go. And I want, we're going to talk about match font. Okay. Let's go match font. And let's grab the bottle. Okay. And this was a demo file that was created on purpose because it kind of bridges that transition between back in the day when people shot film and they had to use like chemicals to develop that film, which is that's what this AGFA bottle is. You know, you use chemicals. But anyway, notice that there's a type layer right to the upper right. So that's the original photo. Added the word AGFA in a whatever font that is. And but if you look on the actual bottle, the font for AGFA is definitely not that font. And a lot of times we were trying to recreate something that was taken from an old photo or hand drawn, or someone maybe created the type, they did hand lettering, or maybe it was from you know, an old style sign. And what you're looking for, you won't always find the exact font because who knows what font that was. That might have been something custom. But it would be great if we could find the next closest font to it. And so Photoshop has a match font feature. And and keep in mind, that's an image. That's not typed on that bottle. That's a picture of a bottle. The only type in this document is the word AGFA in the upper right corner. So what I'm looking for is the font that looks like that, or as close as I can get to it from Adobe's Adobe fonts. So how can I do that? Well, I got the text layer selected. Then I'm just going to go to my marquee tool. And I'm just going to put a marquee, rectangular marquee selection around the image. So I'm just saying, Photoshop, this is the type that I want you to pay attention to. Then if I go to my type menu, I can come down to a feature that is fairly new, but improved in this latest version, because now it also works with vertical type. It works with multiple lines of type, and it works with more fonts. So it's been improved in this last version. But match font is under the type menu. And when I choose it, what it tells Photoshop to do is, because I have a text layer selected, so it just says, look at that marquee, try and figure out what that font is. And when you figure it out, apply it to the text layer that's already selected. So it's now searching for fonts. These are the ones that it came up with. And it's saying, I think these are close. Now there's two sections. The top section with the stars next to them are fonts that I already have loaded. These are ones that are already synced. They are already in my system. Then it shows me these ones below that are in Creative Cloud that I don't have synced yet. So I'd have to sync them down in order to preview those. But if I click on one, it shows me what that text that I selected looks like compared to the text that I told it to look at. Now that's pretty close. It's not spot on because the G is not as curved as the G here, but that looks pretty close. So I can go ahead and try another one. Try another one. This is all the same font, just different styles. Nope. That one looks a little closer. And then let me try that one. That one looks pretty close. So really, again, it's not saying I'm going to find the exact font or make it up for you. What it's saying is I'm going to find the ones that I think are close to this. Now, if I can't tell by these, but if I like to see what one of these like cheap pine sands looks like, I can go ahead and just download that font and then click on cheap pine sands to see what that looks like. And the G has a little swash down here in this font, but it doesn't have it in the original. So therefore that's not going to be close enough. So I might go with that one or that one. I think this one's more accurate. So then once I click OK, it changes my font to whatever that was I just chose. So match font from an image in Photoshop so that you can then use your, you can type out whatever else you need to say, or you just saw a font in a picture that you really liked, but you didn't know what it was. You want to get something close to it. This is the fastest, easiest way to do it now in Photoshop. And then, of course, one of the things that I should point out is that I'm a huge fan of Creative Cloud libraries, this library panel. And let's say that I really like that AGFA text. I don't even, like I said, I don't remember which one it was that I picked, but let's say I really like that one. What I could do now is I could say, well, that text layer is selected so that I don't forget what it is. I can go ahead and add that as a character style to my library. Now you might say, well, Terry, don't you have paragraph styles and character styles in Photoshop? Like you have in InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop? Yes, but those are only going to be in that document. In other words, if I like this style that I just created and I click create a character style in my library, now that character style is available when I close this document and open up any other document or open up any other program. If I go to that library, I will have that character style from now on. So I like, don't get me wrong, love paragraph styles and character styles in Photoshop that have been there for 20 years. But the character styles in libraries are more universal, because now if I went to Illustrator or went to InDesign or went to another Photoshop document, that style would be there as long as I have this library open, and I can just type something, click it, and it will style it that way without me having to export the style from Photoshop over to another program, so forth and so on. So just keep that in mind, that if you find something you like, you can easily convert that to a style, and we can even give it a name. I can say that that's my AGFA style. And now that I've named that, it shows me the font. The font's name is Kumu, but I've named it AGFA so I can remember where I got that from, what that's for. Okay, next up. Let's see, we did that, we did that. Oh, we're gonna do camera raw, that's right. I was gonna talk to my photographers. All right, I've got a folder here somewhere. I guess I don't anymore, let's search for it. All right, let's open up this one, camera raw demo. There it is. Okay, so I just did a search on my hard drive for some raw files. I know I had folders with raw files in them. And here are some raw files from a church that I photographed in Denmark. So I'm going to select all 4 of those raw files. I'm going to drag them into Photoshop because the camera raw interface in Photoshop's been completely redesigned. So let's go ahead and drag those into Photoshop. There we go. And I get this new camera raw, by the way, latest version, 13.1 camera raw window. And this camera raw window looks a lot different than the camera raw that we had in the past. First of all, it's got dark mode. Second of all, the film strip that used to be on the left side is now along the bottom. Third of all, and probably the biggest point, is on the right, all the sliders, they're all still there, but they've been repositioned or relocated to be as close to Lightroom as possible. So that way, photographers going from one program, whether it's Camera Raw on Bridge, Camera Raw on Photoshop, or Lightroom Classic, or Lightroom, the cloud version, or just Lightroom, you have the same consistent user interface. So now when you learn it once, it doesn't matter which application you're using, everything should be in the same place. So like all of these icons, like the crop tool, the healing brush, or spot removal tool, all of these things used to be across the top. Now they're down the side because that's where they would be in Lightroom. All right, so if I want to adjust the exposure of this, I can. If I want to adjust the contrast, I can. If I want to do an auto tone, I can. And do all the things I always did, but everything's right here. If I want to go into effects and I want to, actually, I don't want to go into effects. What I want to do instead is I want to go to dehaze. I want to add a little dehaze to this, I can. If I want to add a little texture, I can. So again, a non-destructive workflow, but Camera Raw has been reimagined to work more like, or look more like Lightroom and work more like Lightroom. You still can cycle between your before and after. You got that view as well. And let's go back. And there was one thing I wanted to show up here, is that while there are some changes here, there was one thing I wanted to show film strip. Yeah, on the film strip, if you have to have it vertically along the side, you can switch it back. But I would just get used to it being down at the bottom, because again, that's the experience you're gonna have in all the other applications. So there are some things you can switch back, but for the most part, it's gonna look like this going forward. You can still select multiple images. You can still apply, changes to multiple images at the same time. So you can still do that. And it's now showing me my before and after in a halfway or side-by-side view. So that's all the same. And of course, everything you do here is still non-destructive. So if I click done, it applies it to the metadata. Or if I say open, it opens those images into Photoshop with the changes that I've already applied to them. So I'm just going to hit cancel because I don't want to apply any of that stuff. All right, next up, since we're also getting down to the half-hour mark of time left, let's go ahead and start getting into some of the newer things. Let me open up this one. I'm going to close my character styles for a minute and open up an image that I have here. Let's open up this guy. All right. Okay. Photoshop for years has always been, the interface has always appeared to people that if you know what you're doing, you know where things are. But if you're new and you don't know where things are, this can be a very daunting interface. It's got all these tools, it's got all these menus, it's got all these panels. I have no idea where to go to do anything if I don't know what I'm doing. And that's always been the balance of trying to bring new users on board, but not piss off the existing users by making a whole bunch of interface changes. And it's like, how do we make it with training wheels until everyone gets up to speed and they know where everything is? So one of the things that's been constantly evolving is the search. If I go up to this little magnifying glass in the upper right-hand corner, which looks like a search, if I click on that, that brings up this newer panel. It brings up the Discover panel. And what the Discover panel gives me right off the bat are hands-on tutorials, quick actions, what's new, user guide, support community, plugins, Adobe stock, fonts, Adobe Live if I want to watch live streams. It's all right here in one spot. So if I can just go start perusing tutorials. That's one thing I can do. But the other thing I can do is right off the bat is search for whatever it is I'm trying to do, like how to remove background. Now, once I ask for how to remove background, it gives me all of these things, like it shows me tools and features, it shows me help documents, and it shows me hands-on tutorials. So that's great that I can just jump right in and start learning how to do things. Or I could search for a tool that I'm looking for. So for example, remember I said if you didn't know where the object selection tool is, there it is. If I say, show me the object selection tool, it even highlights it for me. It even gave me a little blue mark saying, there's that object selection tool that Terry was talking about. That's where it is on your tool panel. So great. This is going to be a big help for people that are getting started or just can't remember a feature that they don't use every day. But one of my favorite things is that a lot of times we just want something to happen. We're up against a deadline. We don't have time to learn. Maybe we'll learn it later. How about where's the do it for me button? Like, I don't have time to figure out how to cut out the background. Can't you just do it for me? And if that's the case, then you have this quick action section with which we're starting. So if I go to quick actions, here are the quick actions that it's identified that would work with this photo. One of which is remove background. So if I click on remove background, it tells me a little bit about it. And again, I don't have time to learn. I just want it done. And I can go ahead and click apply. And it's done. That's it. It removed the background. It made a mask. It did all the work for me. And it's even giving me the option if I didn't like the way it removed the background in his hair, I can see a little bit of the blue sky there. I can go into selected mask and continue working on it. And it even asked me, are you happy with the result? Because it wants to know, did it do a good job? So it can, if not, it could get better so that we can get that feedback and see what we did wrong and continue to improve this feature. So quick actions and just the Discover panel alone will help users that are either new to Photoshop or don't use it every day, and they're not experts and they don't remember where everything is every time they go to use it. And they can just quickly go to that search and find whatever it is in simple English. Maybe I don't know it's an object selection tool. Maybe I just want to say, how do I select objects? And then it will propose the object selection tool for me. So, because a lot of times we may not even know what to ask for. So just ask for it the way you would normally ask anyone else. And most likely it will interpret that and bring up the right answer. Okay, let's keep going along the same lines of cutting things out. Let me open up a couple of images now. I'm going to go down here and grab a city scene, cityscape. It's down further, down further, down. There it is. So I want that image. Great. And I want to put somebody on top of it. And the person I'm going to put on top of it has a problem. Let's go ahead and put her on top of it. The problem she has is she has hair. That's a problem. It's a common problem these days. And so if I want to cut her out, cut the background out so I could see that sky background behind it, and we could use the quick action. It probably would do a good job. But let's say, I think the male's here. Let's say that we wanted to do it kind of the way we used to do things, the manual way. So there are all kinds of selection tools. There's select and mask, which used to be refine edge, which used to be something before that, all kinds of ways to cut out selections with hair or fur. But one of the biggest advancements I would say in Photoshop in the last decade is the new Adobe Sensei powered select subject, because refining a selection is great, but starting with a great selection to begin with means you won't have to do as much refining. So if we can get the selection better automatically, then that means that people will be that much further along with doing the work. So select subject in the 2018, 2019 version of this, if I would have done it on this woman, I would say it'd probably get me 60% of the way there. It would select her shoulders. It would select it'd isolate the hair as best it could. And then I would probably spend anywhere from another 5 minutes to another 20 minutes refining the hair and getting all that blue out of or that teal out of the hair. But the new select subject has portrait technology in it, meaning it now knows what people are. And so instead of getting me 60% of the way there and I got 40% work to do, it can get me as much as 80 to 100% there, to where I either have a very little to do or nothing to do. So that's, like I said, this is huge, because this is one of the #1 most requested things. You even go to our YouTube tutorials, everyone's trying to cut things out because you're trying to put it on a different background. You're trying to just use the subject on top of text. You're trying to do all kinds of things. And so that's why selection tools and cutting things out are important. So for example, if I now go up to select, or by the way, you can be in any selection tool to do this, but if I go up to select, there's actually a select subject right here. And again, this has been here for years, but the new algorithms, the new Adobe Sensei behind this now knows what people are with hair. So if I say just simply select subject and nothing else, it's done a tremendously better job of selecting the hair than it would have done a year ago. So that alone is huge. Now, did it do it perfectly? I don't know yet, because the selections are still the same selections from the 90s. They're marching ants that are hard edged. So we don't really know what the softness looks like of the hair. So the next step is I would want to go into select and mask, which is this button right here, or I can do it from the menu, select and mask, to really see what I got and see what it looks like against the background. So when I go to select and mask, I can see, oh, yeah, that did a great job of getting me 95% of the way there. There are still some blue I can see, or some teal in the hair, and there's still some, especially in the thicker part of the hair, it's really there because it wasn't along the edge, so I didn't know what to do with that at all. But I have all of these controls on the right-hand side, and I have a refine edge brush on the left-hand side that's automatically selected. And this is where, remember I said I would spend 5 minutes to 20 minutes, whatever, refining it. That's what that would be. I'll be spending most of the time brushing that teal out of the hair to make it look right. I'm not even going to touch the refine edge brush right now. I'm going to go over and do a couple things. First of all, you have a brand new, as of this latest version of Photoshop, a brand new refine mode. So if you were going to use the brush, there's a choice now of refining based on color aware, meaning separate the background from the subject, or object aware, meaning use the shape of the object instead. So it's on color aware by default in this case, so that's fine. I'm not going to touch any of the stuff, but I'm going to just go down to one checkbox, decontaminate colors. That I do this all the time. And it's usually a final step after I spend 5, 10, 15, 30 minutes brushing. What decontaminate colors means is it says, like, I'm technically sitting on a green screen. So if I were to take a flash photo of me on this green screen, most likely some of that green would be reflected onto the edges of my silhouette. It might be reflected in my hair, it might be reflected on the sides of my face, depends on how close I am to that green background. That teal that we see in her hair is kind of also that reflection of that color on her hair, because her hair's not teal. We're just seeing the fine edges of teal around or reflected on. So if I don't brush it at all, and I just simply go in and say decontaminate colors, it gets us 99% of the way there. So it just taking that reflection out, I could almost be done if it wasn't for this little bit of teal right in here. And there's a little bit of hair missing right there. So now is where I could go into the refine edge brush and not spend a bunch of time taking things out that were already there. Now, when you start brushing, it will temporarily start bringing back those edges until you let go. So once I start brushing, I'm gonna come in here and brush in and out of the hair, and then let go and let it recalculate. And there it is. Okay, I see a little more. So I start at the blue and I brush into the hair, or the teal, I should say. And same thing over here. I'm gonna start out here and come over here and kind of do something to bring that missing piece, either completely take it away or just make it look better. There we go. That's more natural. And I mean, I can nitpick and find other spots, but I think we're pretty much done for the sake of demo. I could zoom in, make sure I got every little bit out, but instead of me spending minutes on it, I might spend a minute on it or 2 minutes on it, and have an amazing cutout that was unlike anything I'd done before. So now if I go ahead and click OK on that, I'm going to output it by default with a new layer with a mask. So it will not destroy the original layer. It will give me a brand new layer with the layer mask. So if I did miss something, I could double click on the mask to get back into selected mask, or I could just even start over with the original image. So either way that I want to go. And that is the new portrait select and the new refinements in select and mask. Portrait select subject. All right, next up, let's have a little fun with pattern preview. And then we're going to go on to two of my favorites that I don't want to miss. All right, so let's make a new document really quick. I'm going to make this one a square. And I'm going to fill it with white. There we go. Okay. So now I got this square in place. If I were to drag something from my library onto it, I got some desserts here. If I were to do this, well, we get the dessert, and I can now scale it. By the way, proportional scale is on by default now. That caused a lot of controversy because it was the first time Photoshop changed the way you scale things and not having to hold down the shift key. So you're either love it or you hate it. So I'm in the love it camp because duh, I don't want to have to hold down the shift key all the time. But people that are so used to it, they get tripped up when it doesn't work that way, and they hold down the shift key and now it's stretching it. They're like, ah. So depending on which camp you're in, you're going to love it or hate it. But we heard your cries loud and clear. And that for the people that do hate it, there's two things I can show you now. So first and foremost, you can go completely turn it off in the preferences. You can say, nope, I don't ever want that to happen again. Go back to the way it's always been for the last 30 years. Or B, you can say, well, maybe I don't want it on all the time, but I kind of like it sometimes. So now there is a constrain. There was always a constrain button here. This constrains the scaling, which is what maintain aspect ratio. If you turn that off, then it works like it always did. You had to hold down the shift key. But now the difference is when you turn that on or off, it's sticky. So if you turn it off, it stays off forever until you turn it back on. If you turn it on, it stays on forever until you turn it off. So for people that kind of want it sometimes, but not other times, you can now pick and choose when you want that to work by just simply turning it off, and it stays off until you turn it back on. All right, but anyway, I got my my pie, my cheesecake here, I think that is. All right, so next up, let's say I want to design a pattern of more desserts. Well, I could start dragging over more desserts, but I won't know what the pattern looks like until I create it. Now under View, there's a pattern preview. And what the pattern preview lets me do is it lets me see, yep, don't show me that again, great. It lets me see what the pattern's going to look like infinitely, and it's interactive. So as I design it, as I move things around, my pattern will design accordingly. So if I were to bring over that, I get my pattern, I get that, I get this, I can rotate it, I can tilt it, I can do whatever I want, and I'm getting my pattern. Even if I drag it off the edge, I'm getting my pattern the way it's going to look. If I bring over some ice cream, I've got some ice cream now, and we can make our dessert pattern. If I add text, if I do anything I want, I am now seeing what my pattern is going to look like as I design it. So people that are into patterns or just like things that repeat, then you're going to love the pattern preview. Now, once you're done, you can turn the pattern preview on or off. But once you're done, then you would go to the pattern menu, or I'm sorry, pattern panel. And then you would go ahead and add this as a new pattern, and then you would have your desserts. And so now I have my dessert pattern to apply to any other new document from here on out. So that's pattern preview, just a way of viewing patterns under the menu, and you turn it off, you get back to your one tile, you turn it on, you've got your pattern preview to see what it's going to look like as a pattern. So you could, again, continue working, continue moving things around, continue scaling, deleting layers, turning layers on or off, whatever you want, because it's still Photoshop. All you're seeing is the way it's going to look as a pattern. All right, real quick, last two things. All right, so let's get into that. Let's close that. And let's go to this one. All right, and I would probably have to say this is my favorite feature of all time, because as a photographer, we go out, we photograph things, and a lot of times, especially when we're traveling, we don't get to choose what our sky is going to look like. We get what we get. Mother Nature can sometimes be amazing. Mother Nature can sometimes be uncooperative. So Manhattan Bridge, the sky, it's okay. It's nothing to write home about, but it is the sky. Now, one of the most requested things from a photographer standpoint is sky replacement. There are plugins that do it. There are all kinds of third-party tools that do it, but wouldn't it be great if you could just do it in Photoshop without having to buy anything else? Now you can. So if I want to replace that sky, first of all, I can go up to the edit menu and come down to sky replacement. Now, keep in mind, the first sky that comes up is whatever sky I used last. And you have the option to switch to a different sky. And of course, you have the option to bring in your own skies. So if I go get off that sunset and I go to blue skies, and I kind of like, oh, maybe I have them under spectacular. I can't remember. Yeah, I had it under spectacular. Okay. I go under spectacular and I'm just having a hard time deciding which one I want. All right, let's just put some clouds in there. All right, so I click and it puts the clouds in. But you think that's just a parlor trick, but it's actually doing a lot of math. First and foremost, it had to figure out what the sky was. Okay. Then it had to mask it because there's a bridge there. There's a bridge with suspension ropes. It had to, there's trees down there with branches. It had to figure out how to put that sky in between all those little details. Now, I demoed this file many times before I noticed, and I think someone even pointed it out, but Terry, awesome. But it didn't replace the reflection in the windows. Or if you have waters, I'm going to replace the reflection in the water. This is sky replacement 1.0, so it doesn't do that yet. But what they did add was they added a brush on the tool panel of sky replacement. So you could go in and you could brush out, mask out the, here, let me go to my mode for that brush. Sky replacement, mode shifted. I want to go in and let's see. There we go. It's going to let me paint in. This is what I want. There we go. Adjustment. I want that to be. What I'm looking for is I don't want that to be blended in. I want it to be normal. All right, but anyway, you should be able to go in and brush in or brush out to mask out the original sky to the one that's technically behind that building to let it show through. If you wanted something more sophisticated, you can always do that after the fact. And of course, when you output this, it's going to output it as a new layer. I want to do one more thing though. Nope, don't want that. Ah, never mind, it's up here. Sorry, that was a senior moment there. I want normal, there we go. So now I'm brushing out that original sky, and I'm not being very careful in my brushing, but I can go ahead and brush out so that that sky, I'm actually making mistakes on purpose so you can see those clouds coming onto the building itself. So you can put in your own reflection just by taking your time, zoom in, and brush the windows to bring in that sky that's actually there to be reflected. Now, to bring in your own skies, just come down here and click the plus sign. You can go grab any sky you want. So it could be just as long as they're, I believe, JPEGs, you can bring in any, and it doesn't have to be just the sky. It could be buildings and a cityscape or whatever, because Adobe Sensei will figure out, even if you bring in an image that's not just simply the sky, it'll figure out what the sky is in that image and use it. Now, the other thing that's huge is that not only did it replace the sky, figure out the details and mask it perfectly, but if I change the time of day, let's say I go in and I click like a sunrise or sunset. Well, it's also changing the tonal values of the foreground to kind of match, because bright blues now, of course, it, I already masked some of the windows, so it's bringing in that same sky. But it's not a blue sunny day, so you shouldn't see a blue sunny building. You should see more of an orange building for the sunrise or sunset that's being reflected here. Now, if I do decide that that's the one I want, once I click OK, that all becomes a set of layers in a layer group that I can always turn off, turn back on. I can continue working with the mask. The mask is right there, the one that I was painting, and the mask that it did for the suspension ropes and the trees and all the other things. If I felt that there should be something more done to the mask, I can get into the mask and continue working on it. So it's all non-destructively done. You don't lose anything with your original sky. It just puts this layer group on top with your sky replacement. So even if you turn that one off, go back to your background and run a different sky replacement, you will get a different sky, and you can pick and choose between them. So sky replacement, huge, huge new feature. And now I never look at any of my outside images again the same, because I'm like, maybe I want to change the sky, do a better sky, to a different sky. And again, it's one click away. And now I'm also taking pictures of sky. So if there's a really dramatic sky outside, shooting that, adding it to my collection of skies that I could use to replace in the future. All right, last but not least is Photoshop's neural gallery, neural filters. So for example, if I open up this photo and I go to my filter menu and I come down to neural filters, these are mostly experimental, but they're here for your entertainment, for you to play with, see if you can get something out of them. These neural filters are Adobe Sensei powered, so they're AI based. And as you can see, there's only really a couple that are kind of like ready to go, skin smoothing and style transfer. But if you click on the beta filters, you'll get a lot more choices, but these are all in beta. These are ones that are saying, we're still working on them. They're not perfect. Don't judge us on them just yet. Play with them, see what you like. Smart Portrait is one of my favorite ones for people because it's just fun to play with. So for example, this is a stock photo. I don't know who she is. But let's say she wanted to know what she would look like if she got older. So one of the choices here is, and nobody wants to know what they look like when they get older, not publicly anyway. There's facial age. So if I turn up the facial age, which will automatically select it, it will process this particular image. So it's going to take a few seconds to upload a proxy, render it in the cloud, and then bring that result back down. It only needs to do that once, and then you can keep working. So if you need to work offline, do this one time online, and then you can save this as a smart filter object or smart object, and then you can just keep coming back and applying different filters to it, and it will do it. But that's pretty awesome. Look at what that did. It gave her, you know, the wrinkles, it gave her the white hair, it like kind of just aged her just like that. So you can kind of see where some of these TV shows are going, where they're like, what would the suspect look like if they were 10 years older? Just fun to do that. And just simple things like, even if I turn that off and I were to change her head direction, let's make her look more to this side. So just changing her head direction, and we'll give it a second to process, and just turns her head a little bit. And you can even change the direction of her gaze, like which way she's looking with her eyes. So if I wanted her eyes to kind of match and go that way as well, I can kind of turn that. Give it a second. Yep, and her eyes turned. So just creepy and cool at the same time. All right, I'm going to cancel out of all of that. I'm going to close this one, and I'm going to give you more of a real world practical example. Here we go. Black and white photo. This photo was black and white. It was never color as far as I know. And I would love to have known what it would have looked like in color. Now I've colorized old black and white family photos before. It takes hours to colorize a photo, to get all the outfits and the skin tones and all the room right, and to do all that. Now I can guess, well, those are trees. They should probably be green. Those are mountains. They should be, you know, whatever color you want. Those are skies. They probably should be blue. That's grass. It should probably be green. These are sheep. They could be, you know, dark and white. I see dark sheep and light sheep. But just the time it would take you to individually paint all of those objects could take hours, if not days. So now if I were to go back to the neural filters, and I just simply do one thing, I go to the beta, and I go to colorize, and I just simply turn it on. Done. That's it. Done. Blue sky, green trees, green grass, alternating color sheep, sun, sunrise, sunset, sheep herder. It's a new layer. There's before, there's after. And did it do it perfectly? No, because I can see this one sheep screen. So I can probably mask that one back out to get it the right color again. But that's going to take me 5 minutes or less versus hours to paint this manually. And that's my time. Any questions that I did not hear or did not see?
Yes, Terry, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. This is from Bob Kennedy. Can Photoshop process Apple RAW? And if so, does that include a depth map?
Well, Apple RAW doesn't include a depth map because I've tried shooting portrait mode. You can't shoot portrait mode and RAW at the same time. But the answer to your original question is yes. Camera RAW was updated even before Apple shipped their RAW. And yes, it does support Apple RAW in both Photoshop and Lightroom.
Okay, great. Thomas Hopkins wants to know, what computer is this presentation being done on?
A 2017 iMac, 27-inch.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Would someone like to unmute their mic and ask the question?
Terry?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? I have a lot of old
I don't see
slides.
another too much time learning.
I have a lot of old slides.
Okay, go ahead, James.
Have a lot of old slides, you know, and I was wondering what it might do with some of those, because they look good on the slide, but then they don't, when you bring them in and try and print them out, they're not much there. And I just wonder if with all these improvements, if there's any way it would tighten up a slide, like say from the 80s or something like that.
Well, the problem with a slide is getting a high enough resolution scan. So if you can get a high enough resolution scan of that slide, it should do okay. Again, it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. So it's only going to be as good as the original. If the original's not good at all, then you're not going to get great results. If the original's decent, you should get better results than you were getting before.
Okay. Hey, Terry, just one quick question on that. Did you used to work for Michigan Bell
Never.
in Detroit? Oh, okay. So I knew a Terry White back in the day. I just wanted to.
I get questions like that all the time. Did you used to live in Grand Rapids? Did you go to this school? Did you used to work here? And the answer is always no. It's never someone that says, did you used to work here? Oh, yeah, I did. No, it's always confusing me with someone else.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yep.
Terry, is any of this stuff available in Elements?
Say that one more time.
Is any of these new items available in Photoshop Elements?
I'm going to have to say I don't know, because I haven't launched Elements in probably 5 or 6 years since my last user group presentation. But I will say this, Elements is usually where the team tries things out first. So when I was showing the color replace or the colorize feature, someone said, oh yeah, Elements has that. So I was like, oh, cool. So I would say some of it's probably already there because it probably started there because they like to try it on the non-professional crowd first before they really tweak it to make it, you know, suitable for professionals. So I'm going to say yes, the camera raw stuff's there, some of it's there, but some of it won't be. Like neural filters is not there, and some of the other stuff won't be there as well. So some of it will be, some of it won't.
Thank you.
Tom Piper, will you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Good afternoon, Terry.
Good
Tom
afternoon.
Piper, I remember back to Macworld. My question to you, do you have another black and white photo that you can colorize and correct the color on one part of it?
Corrected in what way?
Like your green sheep, turning it to white.
Sure. Well, I can do it on this one if you want. I mean, do you just want to see another photo, or is it just you want to see what I would do to make this one white?
Just to show how you do it.
So I would zoom in on the one that got some of the green on it that shouldn't. I would add a mask to it, and I would go in my paintbrush with black paint, and I would just simply paint that back out of it. Once I've taken the green back out, if I wanted it to be more of the beige that like some of the other sheep have gotten, because remember, this is taking it back to being a black and white, then I would adjust my color accordingly. So I could maybe make a selection of that sheep and apply a filter to it, like a warming filter that's going to give it that color. I might select that color and paint that color onto it. So it's a lot of different ways I might try it. So let me go to that background. Let me go in and choose my object selection tool. And now that I got the sheep selected, I don't know, any number of ways I could do it. I might even use a camera raw filter. So let's go filter, camera raw filter. And now that I got that area selected, I might go in and add a little color grading. So in the midtones, not so much red, maybe something like that. It may take me a second or two to dial in the exact right color, but I don't know, something like that to get it that color, and then I'm done.
Wonderful. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you. I need you on Apple World University, User Group University.
All right. Michael Slider, can you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Terry, great presentation. Question, I'm familiar with using Luminar skies as well. My question to you is on the Photoshop, you had said that it uses a JPEG to replace the sky. So if I have a mixed mode in Photoshop with a sky JPEG and a raw photo, and I want to enlarge it, does it get pixelated when I do that?
Well, it depends on the resolution of your JPEG. So if you have a really tiny JPEG, probably. If your JPEG is the same resolution as your original photo, probably not.
Okay, but the raw portion of the picture stays the same. It's just the sky that gets replaced as JPEG.
Correct.
And at the end of the day, it saves it as a PSD.
Saves as whatever you want.
Okay, well, that's very powerful.
Thank you. I'll let the team know. I can't take credit for things I didn't do.
All right. And with that, we are out of time. Terry, thank you. Thank you so much. George, you want to chime in?
Yes, Terry, we really appreciate your being here and thank you very much. And stay well and hope all is great with you.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Everyone out there, stay safe and stay healthy. And until we meet again.